Daily Tech News Show is made possible by you listening right now. Thank you so much. That includes Howard Yermish, John Atwood, Pat, and James Williams. On this episode of DTNS, the DOJ might try to break up Google. Apple opens up the NFC chip, and Valve's SteamOS is coming to Asus? Apparently, yes. This is the Daily Tech News for Wednesday, August 14th, 2024 in Los Angeles. I'm Tom Merritt.
And from Studio Animal House, I'm Sarah Lane.
In Salt Lake City, I'm Scott Johnson.
And I'm the show's producer, Roger Chang.
We have all gathered together here today for one purpose. What is that purpose, Roger?
That is to give you the best news about tech in a pleasant and balmy climate.
I like it. Sarah, you?
I do too.
Yeah.
I like it too.
I was going to say inside a delightful calzone.
Ooh, yeah.
All right.
A tasty
Yeah.
calzone.
If you eat the whole
of tech
calzone,
news.
you have all your news.
Yeah. We have the flaky outer shell of Quick Hits, and then the juicy discussion center that is savory and
I
delicious.
thought you were going to say juicy, disgusting center. I was like, Tom, come on.
Yeah.
You know,
Disgusting.
Hopefully not disgusting.
sell yourself short.
Yeah.
Sure.
Let's start with that flaky crust, the Quick Hits.
World's largest electronics maker Foxconn announced its net profit rose 6% in its latest quarter, and that was driven by, you have one guess. Yep, that's right. A boom in demand for AI, specifically AI servers. Foxconn expects demand to continue to boost growth in its following quarter, and that its development schedule for NVIDIA's GB200 chip is on track, with product delivery starting this year and ramping up in early 2025.
Hey, I guessed right.
You did.
You did.
TNT has decided not to carry the Pixel 9 Fold, even though it carried the last one. It's not saying why, but they won't be selling it. If you're confused, you're like, AT&T, isn't that a U.S. thing? Why do you have to buy your phone from them? In the U.S., people often still buy their phones directly from the carriers. It's not subsidized anymore, but it's like a payment plan thing. AT&T will carry the other Pixels, the 9, the 9 Pro, the 9 Pro XL. They'll even carry the Pixel Watch. Verizon and T-Mobile will sell the Pixel 9 Fold, though, so you do still have options.
The actors union, SAG-AFTRA, has reached an agreement with startup Narrative, that's spelled narrative without an E at the end, for the use of its members' audio voice replicas in digital advertising. Narrative's marketplace lets actors list themselves for hire and then negotiate rights and fees for the use of their voices by generative models.
XAI launched new generative models in beta with improved reasoning and image modeling if you pay to use the X platform. The new models appear to be using Flux.1 by Black Forest Labs to create the images.
Spotify will start telling iOS app users in the EU how much its subscriptions and other offers cost, how much you're going to pay for them if you go to their website instead of through the Apple App Store payments process. Spotify will not link to their website because they can't. You have to type in Spotify.com in Safari yourself because Spotify is not using Apple's third-party app system, but a different agreement it came to as a result of an earlier lawsuit because those two just can't stop squabbling.
Yeah, remember Spotify sued Apple along with a bunch of other people. This is that. But they don't get to link with this one. They'd have to pay the core services fee and like 27% or something, or maybe it's 17%. Anyway, yeah, that's not what they're doing. Bloomberg and the New York Times sources say that the U.S. Department of Justice is considering asking a judge to break up Google. This is making headlines all over the world. U.S. may try to break up Google. U.S. considering asking the judge to break up Google. To refresh your memory, because there are many antitrust lawsuits out there, this is the one that was recently decided by a judge that Google had monopolized the market for text search ads. Remember, there was a whole breakdown of like, well, they didn't do it for this kind of ad or that kind of ad, but they did monopolize the market for text search ads, mostly because they already monopolized the market for search because they're so dominant. And the judge found it compelling that they were paying so much money to companies like Apple, Mozilla, Samsung. Some of those companies had even testified. Apple famously testified like it wasn't worth it for us to develop a competing search engine because they were paying us so much money. The decision is done, but they haven't decided the remedy yet. So that's the next part coming up is Google and the Department of Justice will appear before the judge and say, we think the remedy for this case should be X. Google's going to say, we'll buy everybody a bag of chips or something really cheap. And the Department of Justice will say, maybe break up Google, right? Like that is something they could ask. The judge decides. Judge doesn't have to do what either one of them do, but he's going to hear their arguments to help inform his decision. So this story is not terribly surprising. The story is that the sources say the Department of Justice is considering, when they appear before that judge, saying, we believe that you should force Google to divest themselves of their advertising business or part of their advertising business. That is likely that they are considering that. In fact, I would go so far as to say it would be incompetent if the Department of Justice team wasn't considering that and going through like, is this what we want to ask for? If we do, is it push it far enough, et cetera, et cetera. None of this really matters.
Can you imagine? Yeah. Can you imagine the DOJ saying, well, a judge said that Google, you're indeed a search monopoly. That's sufficient. We're going to go pay attention to something else now.
Yeah, right.
It's like, of course, these are the possible next steps of something that could really change. I mean, it's somewhat unlikely that Google's going to be split up into a bunch of pieces. But if it were, and we don't know yet, it would make Google a very different company.
Prosecution has to ask for something they think will sway the judge toward their side. The prosecution in these cases, even though they've won, rarely think they'll get everything they ask for. So asking high for divestment might be a good strategy. It might not. It might be too far, and the judge ignores everything because they're like, well, that's way too far. So they might not ask for divestment because they know the judge won't go for it. So they're going to ask for like a higher amount of penalty, a higher fee to be paid, a longer term of prohibition on exclusive agreements. But of course they're considering this. And even if the judge said, absolutely, I agree, Department of Justice, we're going to force Google to break up. You're going to sell your advertising arm. You're going to call it DoubleClick again. Get it out of there. Google's appealing this decision anyway. So they're going to go to another judge and say, throw that all out. And that process is going to take years and years and years. So we're not going to have a final decision to do anything to Google about this for, 5 to 10 years.
Well, that brings up a point I wanted to ask about, and this is maybe reflective of my very limited knowledge of how these kind of proceedings work. But it seems like the rapid change happening to the search business, whether even consumers notice it or not, is just that, very rapid. We're seeing a very fundamental shift in how results are given to people when they ask for things online. It used to be we would rely on the way Google did it, and then others who copied that kind of model. But that's changing, and it's changing very quickly, including for Google. So it seems like in 5-10 years, we're not even doing what they're going after anymore. Like the whole landscape changes. And I can't tell if that's good for Google or bad for Google in a case like this. If it came to it, if they asked them to break up, would 10 years of scrapping it out in court and then noticing that the entire landscape of tech has changed, is that good for Google or bad for them?
Yeah, it is. It was good for Microsoft. They didn't end up getting broken up, but some people may remember a judge did order Microsoft to be broken up. They appealed, they got that thrown out, and a different penalty was put in place. And by the time that they got the final decision about it, not only had they reduced the severity of it, but nobody cared anymore about Windows being dominant on the desktop because we were starting to move on to smartphones anyway.
Yeah. That's crazy because you think about what they're doing with Gemini and what everyone else is doing with their stuff. Nobody expects.
Yeah, if Google can peddle this out in court long enough, they may be out of business.
Yeah.
OpenAI could just drive them into the ground. So,
Yeah.
Sure, but also Google's not been. I guess what I'm saying is we're not 100% sure what Google's big money bag is in the future either. Right now it's ads, but we don't.
Right.
I don't know if that holds. I don't know what the model is moving forward. Some people think it's subscriptions. Other people think it's not. I think most people expect to be able to search and find stuff for free, like the internet has given them already, and Google has put ads by all that. Maybe they keep doing that. But I think it would be folly to try to say, well, this will all be the same in 2030.
Agreed.
It just won't be.
Yeah. Folly. I will agree.
Yeah. You like
absolute folly.
All right.
Well, Google might not be around in 2030. Neither might Apple, but I don't know. I'm if I were a betting man, I'd say both companies are going to be around in in some form. Speaking of Apple, it announced it's about to do more with the iPhone's built-in NFC chip, using the secure element APIs in future releases of iOS 18.1. Third-party developers, not everywhere, but in Australia, Brazil, Canada, Japan, New Zealand, the UK, and the US, are going to be able to offer contactless payments that are separate from Apple Pay and Apple Wallet. It would be the developer's own experience built off of those APIs. Apple previously agreed to open the NFC chip to third-party apps in the EU. That was to comply with the Digital Markets Act. So rules are a little different depending on where you live, but this makes it as a user, you able to use something, outside of Google Pay and Wallet to do a lot of NFC stuff. You might say, well, don't I already do that? You've been able to for some time, but Apple kept it very streamlined and controlled through its own app system, which I find to work very well. But again, it doesn't give you a lot of options.
It's hard to wrap your head around because you're like, well, I have a Bank of America Visa card, let's say, and it's in Apple Wallet. It's a third party. It's not the one issued by Apple. The point is it can only be an Apple Wallet. What Bank of America might want to be able to do is say, hey, you can open the Bank of America app and tap to pay with that and not have to go through Apple Wallet. And then we don't have to participate in Apple's wallet, API and scheme, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Same thing goes for car keys and the home stuff and everything. It is less convenient for users to have to manage a bunch of different apps for that sort of stuff. That's the beauty of things like Google Wallet and Apple Wallet is it collects everything together. So I think most companies are still going to want to be in Wallet, but they don't have to be now.
Yeah.
Right.
This is one of those things where I keep hoping this keeps happening. As an Apple user, I like Apple stuff a lot, but every time the EU comes raining down on them, they end up having to shift gears or do something different, and then they have to kind of apply it either to the rest of the world or put their foot, dig their feet in and say, well, we're not going to do that. We're going to have to manage this all separately.
Or they only do it in the EU, which is what they're doing with the third-party app stores, which is absolutely true. Another fresh hell of its own. Yeah.
Right, but they give themselves more work by doing that. And so I like it when I see the ones where they're like, ugh, we may as well just USB-C everywhere. Let's go. And they were probably heading there anyway. But some of those things are kind of delightful when I hear about them. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, that's right. Bring it over here because you don't want to manage 15 different formats. Let's get it all together. This feels like one of those that will benefit them in a global marketplace to just not get weird about where this is
and not have to fight a bunch of court cases about it. They probably know they're not going to lose that many people not using Wallet. And CR Pull in our YouTube chat says 30% fee on each transaction, though. No, that is a common misconception too. Google Wallet does not take 30% of the transaction fee. In fact, it takes a very, very, very infinitesimally small amount of the transaction fee. Apple Wallet is very much just shuttling the transactions through. So this is not the App Store. This is not, you're going to avoid the Apple Wallet to save a ton of money. In fact, it's not saving you much of any money as far as I understand it. So don't confuse App Store and Apple Wallet.
Right.
Apple has not been, hasn't shared any payment structure yet, but does say if you're a third-party developer and you want to use NFC in your own app, great, we're going to make that easy for you, but there will be an associated fee to be discussed with you in the future.
There's an API fee if you're independent, which you would not have to pay if you go through Apple Wallet, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Because
it's sort of like Apple saying, "Hey, we're gonna give developers choice. Choice is good. We're gonna make it seem like our way is still the better way."
And I'm going from memory here, but if I remember this right, Apple gets a cut of the payment processing system, but you don't have to pay as a Visa card or anything to be included in Wallet. Whereas if you want to do the third-party access to the NFC, it looks like you are going to pay a little bit of an API fee, which that doesn't seem as egregious as the 30% they take from the App Store to me. That seems normal to charge people to use an API. That happens a lot.
Yeah, but to Sarah's point, I think I like Apple most when they how do I put this? When they say ours is the best way, we've really worked hard on this. Tim Cook's up there just blowing our minds with the implementation of this technology. Even if somebody's had it before, now we're going to do it the best. Well, if that's true, then I think the best sales pitch is go for it. You can use these other lesser things if you want to. Our system won't block them. We're not excluding them. But really, this is the bomb. And if it is, we'll use it. If it's that good, we'll use it. Like I converted to Maps. I got away from Google Maps because I think Apple Maps are pretty good. I like them. I'm not saying that happens for everybody, but that's the point, right?
Yeah.
So earn our trust and do it. Yeah, I think you should. I think people should, if they're going to use it, they want to use it because they want to use it, not because they're forced to do it. And I wish they would do that more.
Yeah,
less force.
I agree. But again, this is not the App Store. It's really easy to get it confused and think, oh, Apple taking a cut, something. That is not what's going on with the NFC thing, even though there is a charge for the API. This is charge for maintenance of the API, not give us a cut of every transaction, because it wouldn't make sense to get a cut of people unlocking their cars.
Right.
I mean, it's more complicated, obviously, because it's underlying NFC is running the whole thing, but it's like taking a photo of your driver's license and that working as much as pulling out your driver's license.
Yeah, or tapping your lock. Anything you can tap with a credit card or a key card, a phone with NFC can also do, because it's just a little chip in there. All Apple's doing is enabling you to access the data from that chip from within the device itself on your app, on your own app.
Yeah.
Do you like hearing us talk about this sort of stuff? We get a lot of our best ideas on what to talk about each day from you on our subreddit. One way to let us know is that subreddit. Submit your stories and vote on them. dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com.
Steam Deck designer Lawrence Yang has confirmed to The Verge that official SteamOS support is coming to Asus's ROG Ally. That's a handheld gaming PC, and many people are very fond of it. It's in the works, so you might be happy out there. Yang added, the team is continuing to work on adding support for additional handhelds on SteamOS. All right, so Scott, Valve previously said it wanted to support third-party devices, was working on that. Seems like it took a bit of a clip.
Yeah.
Why and what changes now?
Well, so I don't want to diminish the voices. I think they're in the minority, but there are some people who aren't happy about this because they like the idea that the Steam Deck is this new, somewhat closed platform, although you can hack it to be anything you want. But this idea that it's kind of ours and that's where Steam resides and whatever. But
I'm
it's
shocked
never really been
to find people on the internet are upset about anything that happened ever. Yeah.
Just want to acknowledge them and now shove them to the side for a moment as we talk about the broader picture, which is I think this is smart of them to do, but also not that unusual. It makes sense. They want to have Steam every possible place they can do it. That's already the model. When it comes to Steam, that ecosystem is their bread and butter. They print money with that thing. And by having it on any PC that can run it, that means Linux, that means SteamOS, it means other forks of Linux, it also means Windows, and of course it means Mac. All of those things are places where people can go and play with Steam. And nobody's like, oh, I can't believe they're moving that over there, or like it's a shock that they're moving it there. It makes perfect sense. So what we're talking about are portable computers with built-in beautiful OLED displays and controllers built right in, but they're just computers. They really, at the end of the day, are more computers. And this is a chance for them to say, well, we have our Steam Deck. Right now it's a leading platform in this sort of PC-based thing that's happening now. And they're kind of leading that. But I don't think that's their ultimate goal, is just to be the dominant player in the hardware market. What they would like to do is say, we've got our solution, and anyone else out there, and they're popping off now. There's a lot of new stuff coming down the pipe, not just the ROG Ally. Why wouldn't we want to be as easily over there on those devices as we can, in the same way that we already do that with PCs, Macs, and otherwise? And this is just another version of that. And the ecosystem is more important than any of it. Like, the category of hardware is good. They're doing great. They're outselling the ROG Allies. But I think that this would be dumb for them to try to dig in and say, well, no, I'm sorry, we're never going to put this anywhere else. I mean, the truth is the ROG Ally is running Steam as well. It's just running it on top of Windows. And the SteamOS is essentially, having to run Proton, which is mimicking what Windows does to make the games run in the first place, many of them, not all of them. And so they're all kind of doing the same thing anyway, just from one direction to the other. Steam is no fan of Windows. And I think they'd really like the idea that what if SteamOS was like your OS choice on the ROG Ally? They would love more of that. So I think this is just part of the continuing, the continuing path they've taken since they've started Steam, or since SteamOS became a thing and they attempted Steam boxes and the Steam Link and all of that. None of that succeeded wildly, but those early foundational days, we are now seeing the fruits of that. And part of that fruit is, more people are making portable PCs with screens on them. We're going to put Steam on there, and I don't think any of us should be that surprised.
Yeah, and I think probably something that's confusing for some people is that this is Linux-based. It used to be something else, but I think it's Arch Linux now with KDE Plasma. But it is open source up until it gets to Valve's Proton compatibility layer. And that's where all the magic is. That's where, you do the Windows running and the Steam running and all of that. So while it is open source up until that layer is closed source. So yeah, you do have to get Valve's permission and probably pay a little money in order to be able to run this.
Right. And I think that makes sense too, because they do want to ensure maximum compatibility. It's also an old model, right? I mean, at the end of the day, Microsoft is who they are because of how they arranged OEMs and how that stuff works. This isn't like that necessarily. But the point is that they don't want to just say, "Well, here you go," because I mean, it's already open source. What SteamOS is based on is open source. Yeah. You could take it and do whatever you want.
Asus could go modify it and use the parts that aren't the Proton layer, right?
Yeah, I could strip this Mac Studio today and put SteamOS on there. There's no real reason for me to do it, but I could, and it wouldn't be a problem. I don't have licensing issues or any of that. But I think they want to ensure some quality. The nice thing about having their own hardware is they do kind of have a pipeline between the hardware and the software and all of the testing that happens between them. With ROG Ally or other competitors, they don't really have that. So this is a way of helping ensure that. And it also doesn't guarantee that every single game works. That's already true. Like every single game doesn't work. It's one advantage that the Ally has, or people who put Windows on their Steam Decks. If it runs on Windows, it will run on those devices. If it runs in Windows, it's not guaranteed to run on Proton or SteamOS. And so there's a little bit of ground to make up there for those guys. They've come an amazing way. Like it's shocking to me how readily gamers will accept what is essentially some fancy compatibility layer, and it's doing it so quickly and so well now that we don't even think about it. We're getting 60 frames per second plus. We're getting HDR. We're getting high resolutions. We're getting all the performance, but there's this layer of translation that no one pays attention to anymore, and that's great to see that come to fruition in general. And I think that they're jumping on this. They're taking advantage of it and saying, this is the time. And we're also seeing an explosion of these devices trying to come out and compete. I don't know when that stops or slows or whatever, but it's
the form factor is clearly popular.
Yeah.
Because there's so many of these. Also, I know there's people saying, well, you could do this yourself, and you absolutely can.
It's true.
Kevin Purdy did it a year ago. He put SteamOS on a ROG Ally. It was not easy though. You can go read his article about it. It wasn't like you just pop it on and run it. And so that's the difference, is being able to just buy a ROG Ally off the shelf with SteamOS on it. Do you think, Scott, that it stops here? Or do you think this is the beginning of the big wave?
No, I think this is the beginning of something bigger. And I think that they're banking on this. I mean, look, PC gaming and the PC as a platform in general has grown, has had a good time. Like consoles have kind of slipped a bit, but the handheld market is booming, and Nintendo, who might just well deserve the credit for this entire movement at the moment, really kicked it all off. And the Steam Deck is really coming from a lot of that inspiration.
Yeah,
it's kind of where the similarities end, though, because what we've got with Steam is this crazy deep potential ecosystem that Nintendo can't even match.
Well, yeah, because the idea was, what if I could play everything on a Nintendo Switch instead of just Zelda and Mario and stuff?
There you go, yeah. And unfortunately, legally anyway, you're not able to go the other direction.
Yeah, right.
But I think this is Steam's flag in the dirt. This is them saying this is what we think the future is going to be, and it's not just handhelds, but it's having a better handle on what is controlling all this. What is the OS? How portable is it? How easy is it to get on these devices? And I think this will help prove that along and push that down the road.
Yeah, well, you pick up that flag and clean that dirt off, and we are going to check out the mailbag.
After our Made by Google roundup with Jason Howell, who was at the show in our show on Tuesday, Kevin wrote in on Patreon, I've had a Pixel Fold since December. I still love the size and aspect ratio. The only feature I'd like is video output via USB-C or a desktop feature like Samsung's DeX. The new Fold, too large, too square for my taste.
I am with you, Kevin, as I said on Patreon, although I suspect if someone forced both of us to upgrade from our current Pixel Folds to the new form factor, we'd complain about it for a week, and then we get used to it, and that'd be the end of it.
You know, I was thinking about that as because we covered so much of just kind of size and shape and dimensions and all that stuff yesterday. Is why are tablets the ratio that they are? You know, why does the square size seem so off-putting? Not to everybody, but to a lot of people, they go, no, that doesn't look right. Is it just because we're used to things that are the size of a piece of paper and or portrait just to be the de facto ratio?
Yeah, I think it's how we see the world. We don't see the world as a square. We have peripheral vision. You know, it's a long rectangle. So,
yeah. Great question.
Well, but then what if you flip it 90 degrees?
Let me try. Dan wrote in on our Patreon as well. We were talking about passkeys. He said, I haven't pulled the trigger on passkeys yet. I think my main reason is the limited adoption of them with accounts that I use. Remember, Sarah told us yesterday that there was an uptick in passkey use. Dan says that is an encouraging report, and more companies move to this more secureness of my data. So Dan's basically saying I'm not using a lot of passkeys, but it's because I don't see a lot of sites that I use using the passkeys. But if more of them do it, I'm in. So I'm with you, Dan. I try to take advantage of them where I see them. A lot of companies have them, and you might not know. That's the other thing. Is like Amazon, big uptick because they started pushing people like, hey, would you like to use the passkey? They had them. People just didn't know they were there.
I actually had this situation logging into Bank of America. It's one of the banks that I use, and I had to pay someone using Zelle. So you go through the B of A app.
Yeah.
And you know, it used face recognition, which I set up. I said yes, you know, let's do that. And I got in, and then for some reason I was at my desktop later, and I had a weird thing with LastPass, of course, story of my life. And I was like, all right, I have to just change my password for Bank of America and make sure it's the correct in LastPass and elsewhere. But the mobile app worked just fine the entire time because it was using my passkey.
Because passkey, yeah, you didn't have to fret about all those passwords.
Yeah, because I was like, why didn't I just get in here yesterday? Aha, on the mobile app I did.
Yep.
So yeah, passkey works like a charm. Scott Johnson, you work like a charm on our show. Let folks know what else you're up to.
Well, so we were supposed to yesterday record the returning new monthly version of the Instance episode 1, and we didn't do it, and there was a reason. I ended up going to Anaheim, California on a very secret trip to Blizzard Entertainment, home of World of Warcraft, and I can't talk about why or what other than I went there, but you'll soon find out, like as soon as next week. The good news is it will happen right around the time that we will record our first episode. So I'd like people to go over to The Instance over on frogpants.com/instance. When you go there, you can get subbed up on the audio feed. You can also check out links for the video and stuff that's coming. There's a little preview there. That's all going to hit right around next Wednesday, Thursday, along with this other cool thing that I was involved in. So I just want people to get hyped. We have a new expansion coming out that very next day. It's a big deal in the World of Warcraft fan base. So go check it out. That's frogpants.com/instance.
Go do that, everyone. You're free to go except patrons. Patrons, I'd like you to stick around. Hold on after the bell rings for the extended show, Good Day Internet. Do you know what offsides is in soccer? No, of course you don't. No one does. But 28 iPhones and an AI model can detect it and will do so in the English Premier League soon. Stick around as we discuss.
Tom, I know what offsize is, but I'm the only one.
Explain it now.
Can't carry the whole world.
Now, before the show ends.
You can catch our show live Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern. That's 2000 UTC. Find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. And join us tomorrow. Justin Robert Young will be here. We'll have a lot of fun. Talk to you then.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.